3 days before Christmas, my 7-year-old granddaughter, Lily, came running downstairs holding a glossy holiday card with the biggest smile on her face. "Grandma, Mommy says these are the prettiest pictures we've ever taken." I smiled automatically and took the card from her hands, expecting the usual family photo. But the second I looked at it, something inside me shifted. Ethan stood beside Vanessa in matching cream sweaters, Lily between them, all three smiling in front of the stone fireplace inside the home my late husband and I spent 32 years paying for. Across the bottom, embossed in gold lettering, were the words, "The Carter Family, Building Our Future Together." My name wasn't anywhere on it, not Grandma, not Eleanor, nothing. At first, I told myself I was being sensitive. Then I noticed what sat above the fireplace in the background. My husband Frank's antique gold watch, the one that had been sitting inside my downstairs display cabinet for years, beside his military photo and wedding band. Vanessa hadn't even asked before using it as decoration for their Christmas portrait. 2 weeks earlier, she and Ethan had sat at my kitchen table explaining they couldn't help with property taxes again because daycare costs and bills were becoming impossible. Ethan looked embarrassed the entire conversation. Vanessa looked practiced. So I paid the taxes myself. Again. Standing there with that card in my hands, I suddenly realized something painful. They didn't see me as part of the family anymore. I was the invisible structure holding their life together while they slowly erased me from the picture itself. And the strangest part, I didn't feel angry. I felt clear, calm, finished. That same night, after everyone went upstairs, I opened the locked drawer in my office, pulled out the house deed, estate paperwork, and trust documents, then called my attorney before I could second-guess myself. Because if Ethan and Vanessa truly wanted to build a future together, they were finally about to learn what life costs when the woman silently carrying everything decides to stop. And before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments, have you ever felt invisible inside your own family, even while sacrificing everything for them? You can tell me in the comments where you're watching or listening from right now. I read every message. And if you've ever had someone slowly turn your kindness into an expectation, I want to know that too. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I'm 67 years old, widowed for 9 years, and until recently, I believed keeping peace inside a family mattered more than protecting your own boundaries. Frank and I bought this house when Ethan was 6 years old. Back then, it was a worn-down property with cracked pipes, drafty windows, and a leaking roof we could barely afford to repair. We spent decades rebuilding it, little by little. Frank worked construction during the day and renovated rooms at night. I picked up extra nursing shifts whenever money got tight. Every hallway in that house carried part of our life inside it. So after Frank died and the silence became unbearable, I said yes immediately when Ethan asked if he, Vanessa, and Lily could temporarily move into the renovated guest wing while they saved money for a home of their own. Temporary became 4 years. In the beginning, Vanessa made effort look easy. She brought me flowers after work, invited me to movie nights, introduced me as mom to her friends. But over time, small things began changing so gradually I almost missed them. Furniture I loved quietly disappeared into storage because it looked old-fashioned. Vanessa started referring to the upstairs kitchen as our kitchen whenever guests visited. One afternoon, I overheard her telling a friend, "Honestly, it makes more sense staying here than wasting money renting when this place will probably become Ethan's someday anyway." She laughed after saying it. Ethan didn't, but he didn't correct her either. That was always Ethan's weakness. He avoided conflict so long that eventually silence became its own betrayal. Still, I kept helping. When Lily needed private tutoring, I paid for it. When Ethan's transmission failed last winter, I covered the repair bill overnight because he sounded exhausted on the phone. Every emergency somehow became my responsibility to solve quietly. Meanwhile, Vanessa kept upgrading pieces of a life she insisted they could barely afford. Expensive brunches, professional family photos, designer furniture bought on sale. Appearances mattered deeply to her, especially appearances that suggested success. Then came the Christmas card, and suddenly all the little moments I'd ignored for years stopped feeling separate. They became a pattern, a slow erasure happening right inside my own home. The next morning, after Ethan left for work and Vanessa drove Lily to school, I called attorney Richard Hale and asked him to come over privately, because for the first time in years, I wasn't interested in keeping peace anymore. I was interested in protecting what was left of me. You can tell me in the comments where you're listening from today, and tell me honestly, what's the hardest part about setting boundaries with family after years of saying yes to everything? Richard arrived just after 10 carrying a leather briefcase and the same calm expression he'd worn at Frank's funeral nearly a decade earlier. We sat in the downstairs kitchen while snow drifted quietly across the backyard windows. I showed him the property records, insurance paperwork, and Frank's original handwritten notes about the house. Richard listened without interrupting while I explained everything that had happened over the past few years. Not dramatic screaming matches or cruelty, but something slower and harder to describe, the gradual feeling of disappearing inside my own life. When I finished, he closed the folder carefully and asked me one question. "Eleanor, are you trying to punish your son, or are you trying to protect yourself?" I remember staring at my coffee for several seconds before answering. I think I finally understand those are two different things. Over the next 2 weeks, Richard helped me restructure everything properly. The home was transferred into a protected family trust, Ethan was removed as sole beneficiary from the estate, and a formal lease agreement was drafted for the guest wing, including utilities, maintenance responsibilities, and monthly rent slightly below local market value. Not revenge, reality. I didn't announce any of it immediately. That was the difference between anger and clarity. Angry people react fast. Clear people prepare quietly. So I watched. Vanessa continued planning expensive dinner parties upstairs while casually reminding everyone how tight money had become. Ethan moved through the house looking permanently exhausted, yet somehow never questioning where all their money disappeared. Only Lily still came downstairs every evening to sit beside my chair and read aloud from her school books like nothing in the world had changed. Sometimes children notice love more clearly than adults notice sacrifice. Then New Year's weekend arrived. Vanessa hosted a brunch for her sister and 2 friends upstairs. Around noon, I walked upstairs for tea and stopped near the dining room doorway when I heard one of the women compliment the house. Vanessa laughed softly before answering. "Honestly, we've basically taken over most of it already." The women laughed with her. Then another voice asked about the antique watch displayed beside the centerpiece candles. Vanessa picked it up carefully and smiled. Vintage pieces make the house feel expensive. Not meaningful, not family history. Expensive. I went downstairs without saying a word. That evening, after the guests left, I asked Ethan and Vanessa to meet me in the library. Vanessa walked in carrying a wine glass. Ethan looked tired before anyone even spoke. I slid 2 envelopes across the table calmly. Ethan frowned first. Vanessa barely glanced at hers before asking, "What's this?" I folded my hands together and looked directly at both of them. It's time we made your living situation official. You can tell me in the comments, if someone kept crossing your boundaries for years, would you confront them immediately or stay quiet until you were completely done? Vanessa opened the envelope first, still holding her wine glass in one hand, like she expected this conversation to be another small inconvenience she could charm her way through. But as her eyes moved across the lease agreement, the confidence slowly disappeared from her face. Ethan leaned closer beside her, reading faster with every page until his shoulders visibly tightened. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The only sound in the room was the soft ticking of Frank's old clock near the bookshelf. Finally, Ethan looked up. "Mom, this is a rental contract." "Yes," I answered calmly. "Beginning March 1st, the guest wing will officially become a leased residence." Vanessa blinked at me like she genuinely thought I might start laughing and admit this was some misunderstanding. "You're serious?" "Completely." Ethan kept staring at the numbers. "This is almost market rate." "Slightly below market rate," I corrected gently. Richard made sure it was fair. Vanessa set her wine glass down harder than necessary. "After everything we've done around here, you're charging us rent?" That sentence settled heavily between us because all three of us understood the real meaning hidden inside it. She believed their presence in my home had become payment enough. I looked directly at her. "No, Vanessa, I'm asking adults to contribute toward the cost of living in a property they don't own." Ethan rubbed both hands across his face slowly. "Mom, we can contribute more without making this official." Official. There was that word again. The same word people use when they want responsibility to stay vague enough that accountability can always be postponed. I kept my voice even. "That's exactly the problem, Ethan. For 4 years, nothing has been official. Expectations stayed blurry, boundaries stayed blurry, and eventually, my place in this family became blurry too." Vanessa crossed her arms immediately. "So this is because of a Christmas card?" "No," I said quietly. "The card simply made me realize how long I've been disappearing in my own house." Ethan looked down at the paperwork again, avoiding eye contact the same way he had during every difficult conversation for years. Then Vanessa said the one thing she probably wished she could take back the second it left her mouth. "This house was always going to stay in the family anyway." Silence filled the room. Instantly, Ethan closed his eyes. I held her gaze for several long seconds before answering softly. "The house is in the family, Vanessa. I'm still alive." Her face hardened immediately. "I cannot believe you're doing this to us." But the strangest thing was, for the first time in years, her anger didn't make me anxious. It made me certain. Because once someone finally shows you how they truly see you, peace stops mattering nearly as much as truth.